Okay, it's September 29th, 2022, and we're in education ISSS meeting number 2. So into the chat, I am putting the meeting document that is being shared right now, and that's like where the transcript recording will be. So for example, in the previous meeting, there's a folder with the recording and some notes and discussion. And there's no feedback written before. I have some points to explore in the agenda and also open to anyone's notes. So if anybody would like to just add or start with anything or introduce themselves if it's their first meeting, and then we can start walking through some of these agenda points. Janice, do you want to introduce yourself or provide a little information on your interest or what brings you to education today?
Not really. When I make a contribution, then I might add something relevant, but I don't want to waste time with personal inputs that may not be relevant.
All right.
Thank you so much. Hold on a second.
Awesome. Okay. So we meet at this time slot every 2 weeks, and then also upon request of Dawn Peel, there will also be like another co-working time. It's all good for me because it's the time that we need to do, so might as well just make co-working intervals. I don't think those will be recorded, but they will just be like co-working on education. So just to kind of bring that up. Then next point, Len has provided several links. So I'm sure that Peter and George have some information and just sort of like and are aware of these things as well, but you know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so over the last 2 weeks, I've been paying special attention to extant work already trying to specify kind of like an upper ontology for systems, terms, and education efforts, looking at George's work and also looking at some resources that that Gary sent. So for example, other than CBook, here were there was many diagrams included in here. So this was one set of documents that's in Gary's person profile here. And then another one, there was one that was like more of a tree-like. This may have been the architecture for systems science. So George or Peter or anyone.
Well, I could talk about Len first of all.
Sure.
Obviously, I worked with him when I was president, and he gave a keynote Bertalanffy lecture, which is on the website. I also worked with him over the years to record some of his lectures, and I had a long conversation with him yesterday because he's very keen to offer up a course that he was to have given at Pomona State, where he was teaching this course to systems engineers, but they did not renew his contract. So he, as a final gesture, wants to re-record his or record his course as he was going to give it, which I said we might do in the new year, under some arrangement with the College of Exploration. So that's where that sits. There are a number of then Troncali presentations on the ISSS Vimeo site. And indeed, if you go and Google then Troncali or systems process theory on YouTube, you'll come up with more videos. So that's what I know about Len and his work. If anybody else has anything to add about Len and his work before I go on to the next set of videos that should be in the record. Okay, so.
And also this is like we're in education, but it's very closely related to our work with knowledge management.
Yeah.
And so in knowledge management, we will be working with the map that Peter's already created. And so currently we're sort of in the knowledge management side, assessing the resources, whatever their ontological scaffolding, whether they're self-hosted or on some other platform, just all the resources that are going to be relevant. And then I see this kind of like upper systems ontology coming from the education side, providing some schemes that will help with sense making of what kind of systems educations are even being offered and how to contrast or compare different systems education's offerings, and also using that scheme to organize the knowledge engineering collections.
Yeah, it's an iterative process between the two, and it became apparent to me when we had our first education meeting and the direction that Daniel was taking it was that we needed a more ordered inventory come mapping of the resources that exist. And I have long felt that to be very important from an education point of view, because we've got a lot of resources and they seem to be hidden quite a bit. And so how to make that more accessible. And I know, you know, whether it's the stuff on the ISSS website or indeed, you know, the books that George has written and the books that Janos has written, how do we make them more accessible for educational purposes and on the website, because this is about education and the web, I suppose, are two things. Right? Is that what we're, something like that?
Until we have the ISSS Library of Alexandria, I think
Exactly.
it'll be on the web.
Yeah. And the other thing, yeah, go on. That's good.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking the other thing is the videos created by James Greer Miller are up on the website, and they were meant to be at least his lecture series on living systems theory. In a sense, that's an educational setting, or it's a lecture series, I suppose one might say.
His middle name is Greer, not.
What did I say?
No, you said
Greer.
right.
I just
okay.
made a typo in my hearing. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. So they're all there. Anyway, I think that's where I am.
Okay. Yes. Like.
Can you talk a
George?
little bit more about your idea of a upper ontology? And I'm curious to know what you have in mind there. Also, I have a rather negative view of reinventing wheels all the time. And actually, I'm developing some negative views about a number of things. But
wait, negative views.
If something already exists and it's workable, I don't understand why we go through this process of doing it over and over again. The other
I don't think we are, George. I don't think that's the intent at all.
That
upper ontology has not been part of our conversation up till now.
Okay, so let me explain how I'm using it and how it won't. I am not intending to be a wheel factory. So I expect and prefer that there are appropriate systems, but here's where my usage of upper ontology just comes from. but it's being used in a more just like organizational way. So the upper ontologies are structural relationships amongst different. I'm not even saying we have to go this formal, especially early on, but an upper ontology then allows various domain-specific ontologies to be coordinated because they're all when they use number, it's referenced the same way, or when they use some other domain-specific term. This is a very formal upper ontology that I have some familiarity with, sumo. I'm not saying that we implement an actual formal logical upper ontology, just that over the last 2 weeks, I wanted to understand, like, well, yes, we can do terms lists. We can always match documents on terms and syntax. There are some limitations to syntax merging. First, it's only language specific. Second, word suffixes and word variants can quickly become overwhelming and create a lot of technical debt. So word matching, or just sort of loose word matching, like word stem matching or tag annotations, can be more than enough. But that's why I was looking in your work and in Gary's work and other shared resources, what the schema of concepts will be, not trying to freeze one in or have one absolutist scheme, but at the first implementation, and this can be where it even stays, we can use tag-based systems where all tags are just equal. So someone says systems dynamics, and then they also add the systems tag, and they also add the dynamics tag. And then on a different work, they just add the dynamics tag. That is totally plausible for coordinating information search. But if there is any prior work that is seeking to have more structured schemes for key entities, processes, fields, then I would want to use that scheme or something, because there will have to be a scheme for the education and the knowledge engineering.
Right. Well, I worked on this problem for many years, and chapter 4 of the new book, I don't know what of my work you may have been looking at. Chapter 4 of the new book is called Ontology, and it provides a systems schema. Yeah, the theory analysis and modeling book.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I, I don't know if it's worth considering. Well, I'm interrupting George's book, am I?
Well,
Go for it. We'll return to it. We'll return to this. So
I'm sorry if I interrupted, but carry on, and when you finish, I'll come in then.
Oh, okay.
So it would be
Yeah.
good to add. It would be good to add that chapter, if possible, George, into this discussion, right?
Yeah, I didn't find this exact section, so I appreciate the reference.
yeah, if you go down, let's see, I think you may have gone too far. Oh, no, it's. Yeah, so here's all the terminology and
this is going to be very useful. This is in a systems ontology.
yeah. And my claim is that everything is a system, so it's like an ultimate upper ontology in my humble brain.
I'm going to keep this up because I know that we will be able to use it. There's sort of the pulling out of the formality. I also was seeking to look at these kinds of resources because this scheme, although it could be applied to these areas, like also just domains and sectors, like to annotate a book as containing, relevance for geology.
Mhm.
Then like this is, I agree, like it's like the entity template paradigm. But I also was looking at documents like this because like there will be other tags that aren't just system processes or components. There will be tags like professional certification, or like there's other things. Again, I know those two could be formalized within a pure systems ontology, but some scheme that um, relates to the kind of search terms and non-systems fields, like project planning. That that's the yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the basic idea. You can analyze those things that exist, whether they're processes, artifacts, populations, whatever the case might be, as systems. Then you've got a basis for, and by the way, hold it on that one. I'm going to be talking this Saturday a little bit about the notion of system language or systemese being an inherent part of the way our brain works. And this just demonstrates how these various processing modules are related, all around the linguistic, but also including visual and even touch input. Tactile input can be related to language through something like Braille. In any case, I try to make a case for there being a core language, systemese, which can be refined in domain-specific ways. So I see a couple of you drinking. The word container is kind of a generic word describing something that can hold something else, some other substance. And you can call it a cup, or you can call it a bowl, or you can call it whatever it is specifically. But it still has a fundamental representation, if you will, in mental concept space. So anyway, that's, I think, what the kind of thing that you're looking for.
Yes. I see almost like a short-term or triage phase and then a longer-term research direction, both of which I believe that I want to implement. The shorter-term phase uses project planning merely as a tag because it can be annotated to documents without too much more like discourse or framing. It's just like, this is about project planning. It should be searchable, indexable, whether it mentions that in English or not. The deeper question is creating a principled model of project planning as a system, which would totally unlock like the modularity and the recomposability of portfolio management. Then you could go, okay, what are the entities, processes, etc., subsided within portfolio management, and that could allow like remixing and education and research around the domain that was previously just tagged as portfolio management, but a deeper analysis will reveal that to be a system, and therefore show adjacent possibles for portfolio management. But in the short term, these are just tags that will be applied. But in the longer term, I want to use these types of, I mean, if systems is quite literate, or complexity is about the patterns across systems, we need to pull back to the representation that transcends the specific systems, so we can find and identify those like isomorphisms and patterns. So this, something in this domain must exist. So yes, Jonas.
I just wondered if it's worthwhile considering one or two sort of more general points concerning education. And that's what I wanted to say, that perhaps we ought to look into as to who exactly we want to teach. Is it going to be school children or university students or educational courses or whatever? And the other point is that what we should consider as well as to what to teach. Because what we normally teach, looking at educational establishment, because what is being taught in general is well established, and the teaching material is some kind of a symbolic structure, which can be the symbolic structure itself, like mathematics or language or materials and physical properties and this kind of thing. And the other form of symbolic structure is models, when the symbolic structure is translated into models of experience derived from sensory organs, which is also well established. Now, the problem with, oh yes, and the other thing that comes from this is that whoever we decide to teach, we ought to establish as to what is going to be the result, or what is the taught person is going to be able to do or understand once we finished with him. And the problem, the particular problem with ISSS is that there is, in my opinion, there is no symbolic structure that is capable of being taught. Now, all these diagrams, they're all very nice, and all the talking and the rest of it, but there is no symbolic structure like, for example, in conventional science, that there's mathematical models of some kind of a part of experience. Now, this doesn't exist yet in system science, and this is what we are looking for. And it's, in my opinion, that is well established as to how to develop the kind of symbolic structure which is capable of being taught. And that is my sort of suggestion. But so far, nobody, not only at ISSS, but anywhere else, has expressed the slightest interest. There must be some reason. Either it's contaminating or a load of rubbish, I'm not so sure. But I have got a few suggestions which might be worthwhile considering. And Peter already mentioned the books that I have tried to produce, or in fact I did. And there is another one in production. And it might be worthwhile sort of looking at it if you wish. It's available. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. I'll provide a few comments. So first, to your question about approaches for developing rigorous symbolic structures, if in the chat or through email you could just provide whatever links, I will add them and I'll add them here. But
you have to be a bit careful with the terminology. In this case, is the rigor, because what that you are looking for rigorous models in conventional sciences like physics, where you use mathematics for very good reasons. But in system science, you have to admit a much wider aspects of the world, like emotive, influential aspects of people and human activity situations. So rigor is not the same as mathematical rigor. There are other ways of doing rigorous things.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to
No, it's
point
important.
it out. That's all.
It's important notes. For me as coordinator, the most important thing is like that the claims and the responses get recorded in text, because the goal, although approximate one, is to update my cognitive model. The goal should be to establish these lines of thought clearly and asynchronously. So any links that you provide in any ways that you wish it could have been said differently is like helpful. So this, I think, is an important research and development direction. How to develop rigorous structures and learn from the best of what other areas have to offer, and acknowledging the differences that in scope and in history that system science presents. And so it also just may have been helpful, like to the earlier points, we kind of jumped right in, but to these questions, more pedagogical concern, more educational level, working with what exists today, while also recognizing like that there can be more rigorous structures developed. So in the initiatives area, there are about 20 initiative areas in this tab here in the Coda. Again, if you want to use Coda asynchronously, that's great, but otherwise it's all good. It just, we have a lot of information to organize. In different initiatives, some of which we may coordinate or catalyze, but ultimately, it's going to be like ISSS members and non-members who are creating the material, engaging the classroom synchronously, and so on. So a lot of those questions that you raised, like who will be teaching and learning, what specific materials will be utilized, how will the results be followed up on, those will be resolved kind of closer to the last mile during the specification of a given initiative. But as I'm just beginning this role and process, like it's just our second meeting, that's why I've had a focus on assessing the landscape of what people were doing and considering and asking for in systems education as an area. And I think it's sort of like I'm working at both sides. Over long terms, especially scaffolding more rigorous symbolic development, which is an area I'm very interested in. But also we need more people to have increased competency and familiarity and a feeling of like participation and inclusion in science and in systems. Otherwise, those symbolic systems will have no one to speak them, use them, improve them. Does that kind of make sense as a layout, or what do you think about that?
I think myself, justifiably or not, that systems teaching should be developed to such a level that it can be taught at school level, just like physics or mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, electricity or mechanics that is begun to be taught, and mathematics at school level goes right up to university and research. When systems teaching becomes an integral part of the body of teaching, then system science will exist and will have arrived in its justifiable generality. That's the aim of development, I think. I would be wrong, of course.
I totally agree, and I support that vision. It is like a intergenerational long game to develop systems science. And there are people and initiatives around teaching youth specifically, but that's not the only initiative that we're considering. So that's why, like, the early research phase led to just these different areas that people were interested in, ranging from professional certifications and like upper management consulting to reskilling of people who are in young working stages, all the way to like youth and children's education in different settings. That's like the territory or like the lay of the land or whatever. And incrementally over the weeks, as we make ISSS materials more accessible, we'll also be coordinating with people who are doing that work and helping and finding out what they need or how to further the work. Because, you know, you said systems teaching should be developed to be taught to all ages. So who's going to do it tomorrow? And who will it be in 1 year? And who will it be in 10 years? But how can we be on the path without waiting for some future symbolic system? How can we be engaged today in the path?
Yeah, what's occurred to me is that we're not going to go out and be the teachers. We're going to have to train teachers in systems. And so a program at in schools of education might be a reasonable starting place, because you have to develop some curriculum for that level. And in the process of doing that, you can kind of see what might be age appropriate to push down to lower grades. So as you got teachers who are going to teach in the grade school level, for example, you can be providing them with materials and so forth for those age groups. And that would be you could get your arms around that kind of an approach instead of thinking about teaching everybody all at once. We could focus on teacher training aspects of it. Now, another thing I want to point out, and then I like Peter, I'm going to have to be pulling out here in just a little bit. When we're talking about this, we probably have to be aware of the distinction between systems science and what we characterized at the last conference as systems practice. In the latter case, people who are, and you mentioned consultants and things like that, people who do what they call systems thinking, go into organizations and say, oh, you do this, this, and this, and this, and everything is going to be just fine. And that's the systems approach. As opposed to system science, which is more what Janos and I would like to see presented. So
I agree. I think
Yeah, I think it's a crucial point. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say crucial. I think these distinctions are really, really important, because everything gets wrapped up into a general, a generality, which is not helpful. And there needs to be, and I think that would probably be a role that ISSS should play, is making some distinctions between the various, not sure what the word is, but when you put systems with the word, with another word, like systems science, systems practice, systems thinking, systems analysis, and so on and so on. I mean, even within systems thinking, there's a multitude of definitions and assumptions about what that means. And so to some extent, it's a linguistic jungle, or that's maybe not the right metaphor, but it's a Tower of Babel. So if it is science, there needs to be some precision and predictability about the use of the language.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, you fellows may depart whenever you need. I agree. I think that I mean, more people are involved in cooking and then petroleum chemistry, and then a smaller number of people are involved in developing the chemical ontology and simulation frameworks.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good metaphor.
I think when I asked broadly, many people focused on embodied, applied, upskilling, professionalism, and so on. And but the golden thread must be actual development and advancement of like the sort of quasi crystal of system science.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we've got the name and that's what people are joining, I think that a clearer, I mean, even the other, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, we had Thomas in Hong Kong saying that people are looking in Google for the word systems theory more than they are systems science, which was an interesting observation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another word that comes after the word systems, and you know how theory relates to models and how theory relates to science is something that Dwayne Hybertson is working on at the moment. But I do think that we as a society and you as VP of Education can do a lot to help perhaps clarify this, or at least create a position for the society to make clear, maybe.
A few pieces just off the cuff that I think are to traverse. One of them is any presentation of system scientific formalisms receives an instant like, but what about pluralism response?
Yeah.
Okay, you've presented yours, but aren't we in a multi-perspectival situation where everybody has their own? So if somebody else has an art-based system science, so that's one, is pluralism. There's several other areas that I can think of developing out, but it's like even the framing and the domain ontologies about how these areas are related is itself contentious and unclear. And to Jonas's point, we don't have like Synergetics by Bucky Fuller that I'm a student of.
Right.
We
Right.
have the book Synergetics, and people can say that there's a typo here and this part has been developed later, but there's a book. And I don't imagine such a tome for system science, like a Principia situation. So then in that pluralism and flatness, all of these different initiatives, concepts, endeavors, they seem just like cousins. And I
Look,
think we need to look deeper.
In the, let's take engineering as an example. Most of engineering is, they're related to each other. So like in our School of Engineering, we have, I think, 6 different kinds of engineers that we're developing. All of them have to take fundamental physics, and certain mathematics. So and that's because the kinds of artifacts and so forth that they're going to engineer are physical artifacts and obey physical laws. So we expect them to be pretty proficient in understanding the science of physics. Now, what I claim is that systems science is not too different. If you want to be a systems engineer or a systems practitioner of any kind, no matter what your perspective might be, you still have to base it on the fundamental aspects of system science. Now, I assert that that's what I spent my life putting together. I think Jamie I can't
Rose.
think. Huh?
Rose.
Rose, yeah, Jamie Rose claims pretty much the same thing. So stuff exists now that is pretty internally consistent. It's formal, it's rigorous, et cetera, et cetera. And that gets me back to my comment about not reinventing the wheel. But I think if you want to call yourself a systems management consultant, for example, you'd better be pretty well grounded in basic systems theory and understand it quite well. You can't just read, there's tons of textbooks right now on, systems thinking and systems management and so on and so forth. And that they're not grounded in system science.
Yep.
So,
I totally agree. Then Jonas is like it is like a relationship between theoretical physics and through engineering, or synergetics as the conceptual intrinsic framework, and then tensegrity in application. And I think system science does sit in the science side of that. And okay, Jonas.
Well, the term science demands some theoretical approach that has got to fulfill certain conditions, such as, for example, the predictive theories that can predict observable situations. Now, if you want to create this kind of science in systems, a different approach is needed. First of all, what we need is the right kind of symbolic structure. And there is only two candidates for this. One is mathematics, and the other one is language. Now, mathematics has now been taken over by the conventional sciences, and it's not suitable for as a candidate for system science because it's too restrictive. And many people tried, such as Clerk, for example, to construct a general system theory, which doesn't work, in my opinion. That is, now natural language is general enough, but it's not rigorous enough. So in order to use it as a symbolic structure for system science, it has to be processed into linguistic modeling. Now that will yield the elementary constituents of which more complex linguistic models can be constructed. And linguistic modeling plus three principles will provide system science. Now, again, so this is the way to approach it. Now, there's just one very brief comment, and that is that conventional disciplines like physics and chemistry and these things, our primary objective is to create models that will help to understand the world around us. Now, there is and they have taken a long time, hundreds of years to develop. Now, when we come to modern disciplines like control systems, operational research, system thinking, and a couple of other things that I just recall, their common thing is not to understand the world, but problem solving. They have come about during the last 100 years before the Second World War, and with the aim of problem solving. and some of them are rigorous, like control systems. And this is the kind of common thing that systems thinking belongs to. And this supplies the basic idea and motivation for development.
Thank you.
Daniel, do you still have that diagram from my book? That
Yep.
yeah, there, that one. So, Janos, I'm going to sort of counter your claim that there are only two modes. Communications.
Suitable ones. Suitable, not.
No,
not
I'm still
there is
going.
an infinite number of models that a
They're
human
not
imagination.
models, not models. I'm talking about the way we communicate things. You said mathematics and language. And I'm asserting here, and I give lots of examples, that it actually takes multiple modes of communication to do a suitable job of describing systems. I get a section in the book where I literally say, here's how we talk, here's how we can talk about systems. But I don't just talking about talking, I'm talking about displaying, demonstrating, building models. All of these can be part of model building, for example. And I give lots and lots and lots of examples in the book of how that is done. So I think it takes all of this, all of our skills of communication, even body language, to do an adequate job of communicating ideas, no matter what they are. This is even true in just standard regular teaching of physics or chemistry or biology or whatever. So anyway, that's I want to emphasize that there are more than one. There's more than one way to impart systems knowledge, and we ought to consider all of those.
Well, of course, there are hundreds of different ways and means of communicating, but we are communicating here in a special way. We are trying to create a system science, and none of these will be, as Daniel's brought up the term rigor. None of these satisfy the four conditions that will be satisfied, that will have to be satisfied by a symbolic structure to be capable of building a theoretical model that is capable of be qualifying to be a system science, if you like,
Well,
which is the science of problem solving.
I strongly
Problem solving is the key.
Yeah, I disagree with you that it doesn't exist. I think I did a pretty good job of putting it together. You might want to take a look at that book just so you don't claim it doesn't exist. It might not be right. I'm not going to claim that it's absolutely the best way to do it, but I think you can meet your so-called criteria for conditions for being a science, and everything is problem solving. There isn't anything that we do that isn't some kind of problem solving approach.
Precisely. This is the universal theme in all living things, not only we humans, but any living organism is engaged in problem solving. This is universal in
Right.
the living sphere, and I extend this by using the principle of equilibrium, or the idea of change of equilibrium, which is generally applicable throughout the universe. And problem solving, the term problem solving as we understand it, is only a particular instance of this. So the idea of problem solving can be extended throughout the living and non-living, I mean, to the non-living inert part of the world. And but you are quite right. It's a problem solving is the universal aspect, and all the structure, this particular structure of a system is created or exists to solve problems. And the crux of the matter is to create this system theory which unites the system structure or the systemic view with problem solving, joined by design thinking. And this is the approach that I'm taking.
Well, descriptively, it's the approach I've taken. So what I'm saying is, don't. I get somewhat annoyed. I can't tell you how many people have told me they got my book, and then proceed to say something that clearly indicates that they haven't read it. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, just in closing, I know that I have a lot to go over. Like when I take off my researcher and scientist hat and the VP hat, I think we need to expand the discussion, because the sense making cannot happen with limited people talking past each other. I think everyone kind of recognizes that. I'm not saying that's even just what happened, but just like it is a tone, and there's a lot of components, and there's a long path to being able to consider this as an expert. And just if we just think of like chemistry education is what prepares chemistry reviewers for other peer-reviewed chemistry papers. System science education, whatever the state is today, needs to develop expertise. And that is quite literally what these initiatives are assembling around, to provide accessible on-ramps so that we can bolster systems. And we're only a short, the journey has been eternal. I'm personally only a few weeks to months into developing the relationships and awareness of projects in different areas. And so I want to just like bring respect and attention to everyone's ideas, and make sure that expert attention is paid where expert attention is demanded, and that we can increase participation to places where people today are not learning systems, but next year I want them to be learning about systems. And I think, so that's the triage and the long-term vision. And I think that they're in harmony, multi-scale systems and whatnot. I just will need a little time after this meeting to digest some of this, probably to buy the physical copy of George's book. And then prepare for number 3 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if the physical copy is going to be any better than the PDF. In fact, PDF is better because it's searchable. But if you don't like reading from a screen. And by the way, I made a mistake. Chapter 3 is the
Yes.
chapter on ontology.
Yep. I jumped there.
Oh,
but
you got
thank
the
you.
whole thing.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah. That was what we were in. Systems ontology, and 4 was yeah. Okay. Anything else that either of you would like to add?
No, this was working out perfectly. I've got another meeting in 2 minutes.
Great.
Thanks a lot, Daniel.
Thank you,
Don,
fellows.
good to see you and talk about this stuff.
Farewell.
Take care.